So as he get him up here, that would be, of course, the great Sal Paolantonio. Sal, how you doing?
You got a star-studded cast. You got two guys, Pat Leonard and Gary Myers from New York. You
I
got
know.
Sean Green. This is some week 7 on This Week in Pro Football.
I know. But see,
I'm going to watch all 80 minutes, Pat. All 80 minutes.
I appreciate it, Sal. Tell about 150,000 friends, too, to do it, please. But I appreciate you coming on, of course, and spending this time with me. We got a ton of things, Sal, to go through. Let me ask you to look back just for a minute now. Do a little last week in pro football, if you will. I said it last week that the game against the Browns was a get-well game for the Eagles. Well, was it?
No, not totally. I mean, getting a win, getting 5 sacks, Jaylen Herz not turning the football over. So those were good in the diagnosis of get well for the Philadelphia Eagles, but erased by the sideline antics of Nick Sirianni. I don't like the name calling, and I'm not going to call them names because I think that's wrong.
Right.
Some people did that this week. It was rather benign, the exchange between him and the fans. It was about running the football. It wasn't aggressive behavior. He realized, however, it was wrong for him to do. He needs to be focused on his team. He's one of 32 guys on the planet that's the head coach of an NFL team. So coming with that status, you have to have stature. You have to have the gravitas of the job. And one of those things is not yelling at the fans after the game. So that kind of erased the good feelings that came out of the shoot. But Pat, really doesn't matter. Honestly, this game at MetLife, I'm at NFL Films. Exit 4 on the Turnpike. Go up to 16W, hang a left. You go in the swamp, and the Eagles will take a bus up there. It's a gotta-have-it win. Dictionary definition from the Eagles' standpoint that they have to win this game. You're playing your first divisional game.
Right.
You got to win a divisional game on the road against a team that's scoring 16 points a game, against a team without their starting left tackle. You got to win. Saquon Barkley's return to MetLife in an Eagles uniform, there really will be no excuse for losing this game. None.
All right. I mean, one of the reasons why, Sal, and I wanted to ask you, before we get into the Eagles-Giants game in depth, and Sal had sent me a bunch of notes that I want to go through with him. But just again, if I could sneak back a minute. Last week, you were the color commentator on Ravens Commanders. And is one of the reasons why it's a must game for the Eagles. You mentioned it as a division game. Are the Commanders, I thought they put up a heck of a performance last week against the Ravens. They didn't seem starry-eyed in any way for a team that really hasn't played big games for years, Sal. Is this team a contender for the NFC East in 2024?
Yes, the Commanders are definitely a contender. The big game will be November 14th, Lincoln Financial Field, Thursday night. A lot of these Thursday night games are bad. This one will be must-see TV. Commanders and Eagles Thursday night at the Link, November 14th. Yeah. You're correct, Pat. The moment was not too big for Jayden Daniels. The moment was not too big for Jayden Daniels. And number 2, the Ravens never delivered the knockout blow.
Right.
The Commanders were in the game until the very end of the fourth quarter.
Yeah. Yeah, I got that same sense too, Sal. Of course, you were there calling the game, so no one would get a better sense than you did. But this looks like a team that has really blossomed a little bit under a new head coaching staff. And God knows, Sal, they've had plenty of them. But it looks like things have stabilized in Washington, and that team does look a lot better. Certainly better than you could say. And let's hold this now. Maybe we'll take a break now, Xander. And when I bring Sal back, I want to talk about another team in the NFC East, and we're going to talk about Eagles Giants. Plenty to do with Sal Paolantonio here on a Week 7 edition of This Week in Pro Football, presented by Kennedy Ford. Welcome back to This Week in Pro Football here on JAKIB Sports. Pat Callahan joining you along with the great Sal Paolantonio on the NFL Matchup Show on ESPN. And one of their lead radio commentators. Sal, in the notes you were kind enough to send me, you made reference to Kellen Moore and the fact that, quote, there is very little formation variation to create favorable matchups. Now, you have been talking about this for weeks, that the Eagles' offense, their game plan, and the fact that in 5 straight weeks, Sal, this is according to Dan Orlovsky, in 5 straight games, the Eagles' initial drive has netted 22 yards. Why do the Eagles appear to be so vanilla on offense?
That's a question that we're not getting an answer to, and it is a problem that is embedded in this team. Dan Orlovsky also said on Get Up, in the beginning of the game, it's about coaching. End of the game, it's about players. Players finish, coaches start the game. That's why for all those years, Andy Reid had 16 plays, the first 16 plays that he had scripted.
Right.
And he was always so successful at it. That was from Bill Walsh,
Exactly
Mike Holmgren, Steve Mariucci, that coaching tree. You skip those plays, you will be successful. You run them in practice. Doesn't matter what the defense is going to do because you can adjust.
Right.
And the Eagles are just not there. Whether or not it is, the injuries that they've had, I don't know. Whether or not it's just the way Jaylen Herz wants to be coached in the beginning of the game, I don't know. But right now, you have very little motion. A.J. Brown is lined up to the left. If they have a one-on-one matchup, anybody can read that. You're going to A.J. Brown down the chute on a 9 route, and you throw it to him in the end zone, and he's going to win.
Right.
Devonte Smith, sometimes they'll put him in motion, but they didn't until the end of the game, and that's when he got the touchdown.
Yeah.
That I just don't have the inside information as to why that's happening.
Yeah.
And when it's asked, the questions are shut down.
Yeah. I was just going to mention that to you, Sal. Sirianni was dismissive when asked in the post-game presser with his 2 children there about the Eagles' inability to score in the first quarter. And he just dismissed that question. Orlovsky further said on ESPN that the Eagles are, quote, the least prepared team in the NFL. Now, that may be too harsh an assessment, but just talk about that for a minute. Does their lack of success in the first quarter indicate that they're not coming in with, as you described it, the type of scripted game plans that the more successful and varied offenses are doing?
Yeah, Dan said that on Get Up this morning. I was on that show from a Zoom call from my home.
Right.
And there was a discussion about the Eagles, and he made a direct causal relationship between the fact that the Eagles have had 1 first down in their first 5 initial drives in their games this year.
Right.
And he basically, said as a result of that, it looks like the Eagles are the least prepared team in the NFL. Right. It is a little overboard. I get it, but I understand the point that he was trying to make. But I wonder, just speculation, perhaps a little informed. I wonder if Nick Sirianni shuts it down because he doesn't want to criticize his offensive coordinator and his quarterback.
Right. That's a fair assessment. It really is. And let's talk about the quarterback for just a minute, if we might. The Eagles are 10th in the NFL in offensive yards per game. And Jaylen Herz, they're averaging 220 pass yards a game, 221, Sal. It's not terrible. He's playing a good quarterback. But you mentioned in the notes, you said, if Jaylen has to go to a second or third read, he rarely makes the right read in time. Now, you've been talking about this all season too, that he's taking too much time to find that third read. Did you see any improvement in that in last week's game tape?
I did not, especially in the first half. Just watching it, you can see he locks in on his first guy, and he's not quick enough to get off of it. Usually the route is already in a very long stretch,
right?
And he doesn't get to the second or third read.
Right. Giants.
And that's going to be a problem this week.
I'm going to say that.
I also wrote in the notes.
Right.
It's very important for Jaylen Herz to be quick, but also patient.
Yeah.
And those two things are not contradictory. Right. He needs to be quick to get the ball out because under Shane Bowen, who's an acolyte of Dean Pease, and there's a reason why Baltimore brought Dean Pease back, and they learned it from Bill Belichick.
Right.
Very good with their multiple blitzes, overload blitzes. They get to the quarterback quickly. He's got to be quick to read, quick to react, quick to get the ball out, have an answer for the blitz. He's been very, very good against the blitz this year. Very good.
Yeah.
Much better than he was last year.
Yeah.
But he has to be patient like he was last week, and don't throw the interception on the deep ball into double and triple coverage like he did earlier in the season. So be quick, short, be patient, long.
Giants pass rush has been pretty good too, Sal. They got some guys that can get after it on the defensive line. They were chasing Joe Burrow all around the yard Sunday night. In another game, the Giants really in a very competitive game. The Giants play competitive games. They just lose them. Right. And I think the Eagles have a decided advantage in talent at quarterback. And boy, that's got to manifest. If they want to win the game, I think he's better than Hertz is better than Daniel Jones, and he's got to play like it, right? I mean, that will win the game for Philadelphia.
Both teams, the pass rush has developed. The Eagles had 5 sacks last week. Now, Darius Slay missed practice on Thursday because of a knee issue. So that's going to put a crimp into what Vic Fangio calls in a game. But that Cooper DeJean corner blitz that got Deshaun Watson was something that is pretty clear that Vic Fangio really wanted Cooper DeJean for that exact reason.
Yeah.
If you're not getting on with 4, Pat, you got to rush 5.
Yeah.
And, the Giants have been doing that. The Eagles did it last week. So to me, it's not really about the quarterbacks. It's about whether the Eagles can get the Jones and whether the Giants can get the Hertz. I got to give you some numbers, and I don't want to steal Sean Green's thunder here, but the Eagles are 1-7 against the spread in their last 8 games as favorites. 0-5 against the spread in their last 5 games as road favorites. 0-5 against the spread.
Yeah.
Last 5 games as road favorites, and they failed to cover 3 straight as favorites. So this team, they're living on the edge, Pat.
Yes, Sal, that's true. They are living on the edge, and a lot of it's in the first quarter. Their performance, I can only tell you, is moribund in the first quarter. I was late turning that game on last week, 3-0 in the first quarter. They just seem to take the whole quarter almost off. Now, it shouldn't hurt them. The Giants, as you mentioned, the Giants only scoring 16 points a game. They're not an offensive threat.
No, but you can't take away one quarter and win the game in 3 quarters every time. So that's why they're living on the edge.
Yeah.
If you're only really producing effectively in 3 of the possible 4 quarters, you're obviously giving your opponent a major advantage. It's like having one hand tied behind your back.
Fair enough. All right, Sal, let's look around the league here. Talk about
you don't have to be a prognosticator or analyst to figure that out. Anybody?
I know that. I know. But let's look around. We don't have to look far around the NFL. I'm going to keep you in the Eastern time zone here. Let's just stay in the NFC East, Sal. I'd love to get your take on just the way Detroit boat raced Dallas last week. Now, let me start with this, because you've seen, there's nothing you haven't seen in the NFL. Is Dan Campbell an outlier in that he obviously had that game circled as a result of last year? If you remember that late regular season game when the Lions lost in Dallas over an officiating call. I mean, he was out and out taunting, I thought, Dallas this week, playing offensive lineman at wide receiver. Is he an outlier as far as coaches go in the NFL, the way he does that?
It was great. It was great theater. I loved it. It was fun to watch.
Yeah.
And he's fun to watch. And they are fun to watch.
They are.
You put that offense on tape and you watch it. That Ben Johnson offense is intricate, detailed. He is scheming guys open. And Jared Goff's ball is accurate.
It is.
He's got a quick release.
Yeah.
He's got a great trajectory. He's got great velocity on his football. They are the only team. Now, we have talked about this on your program all year long. The NFL is scoring at a 14-year low. Scoring per team, per game, is at a 14-year low. There's only one team. I've never seen this before. I haven't seen it in a long time. And as you know, I track points allowed and points scored because to me, that's the most important stat. There's only one team scoring over 30 points a game, and that is the Detroit Lions.
About that, right. Right. And the Lions are averaging almost exactly 30 points a game. You're right. But that is Detroit. Like, take as an example, Philadelphia in 5 games, 106 points, 45 points less than the Lions. This isn't to buttress your point. Now let's go to the other side, Sal. Dallas was a disaster. And Jerry Jones, as usual, ends up dominating the headlines, which is probably, he does a big favor to his team when he does it, because nobody focuses on the fact that Cowboys are really not that good. Did we all vastly overrate Dallas coming into this season?
I didn't. I didn't see them do anything in free agency. It took too long to sign CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott, and it turns out it's the wrong decision.
Right.
It's like I don't know how to explain it, except that they just had, they lost some key players to injury on defense, Micah Parsons being one of them.
Right.
I don't see how they can win games without Micah Parsons.
Yeah.
And you go up against that offensive line in Detroit, which in my view is the best in the NFL. I think the Eagles are second, Lions are number 1. And you don't have Micah Parsons, you're going to get boat raced, dump trucked, run over, rolled over, steamrolled, whatever you want to talk about it. And the owner was ill-mannered on the radio as a result a couple of days later, trying to fire people for asking legitimate general questions.
Yeah. Sal, Dallas is 0-3 at home. The Giants are also 0-3 at home. What's happened to home field advantage here? I mean, has Dallas ever really had a home field edge down there, or is it just too transient a city where other teams easily put fans in the stands there?
There's a couple of teams that really have home field advantage in the NFL now. Kansas City, certainly the Eagles have had home field advantage. When the crowd is as menacing as it is.
Right.
But if you make mistakes, if you don't have your best players, you make mistakes like the Eagles did on Monday night against Atlanta, you're going to lose. Yeah. You don't have your best players on defense, and in comes the only team scoring 30 points a game. You have the best offensive line. Micah Parsons is not playing in the game. Now, there's no excuse for that score.
Right.
That's a college score.
Right.
That's Baylor versus Rice.
That's right. All right, Sal, one last thing for you around the NFL. And again, it's not too far. It's 16W also. That is the New York Football Jets. And the fact that they're now 2-4. And as I said, they're constantly on national TV. But that notwithstanding, what's next for the Jets to do? Are they going to lure Jordy Nelson out of retirement now because Aaron wants him to be his slot receiver? What are your thoughts on the trade for Devonte Adams? And does him showing up in New York cure what is ailing a 2-4 football team?
It better. He was brought in to save the team, Pat.
Yeah.
He was brought in to save the team. But I don't see it this week against Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh, TJ Watt, when the lights go on on national games, TJ Watt is a terror. He's tough.
Yeah.
And the Jets don't have a great offensive line.
No, Sal, they don't. And they've got probably the single most immobile quarterback in the National Football League right now.
They didn't, my view is that Devonte Adams is a good X-receiver, maybe one of the best in the NFL. X-receiver being the wide receiver to the quarterback's left.
Okay.
To the boundary side of the quarterback. Right. And Garrett Wilson was playing that position. Wilson's better on the move. So you put Devonte Adams there, Wilson on the move, Allen Lazard. Now you got something.
Right.
Ball can come out much quicker. Yeah. That'll make Aaron Rodgers more effective with an offensive line that has been difficult for him to maneuver around. So, but listen, Russell Wilson's going to start at quarterback.
Right.
The Steelers, they're playing, mix and match kabuki theater with their quarterback positions.
I know
they are. So I don't know what will happen, but that Steelers defense is legit. It's always legit at home, and it always comes out under the lights in a national game.
And it's probably, Sal, one of the other locales where there is a home field advantage,
yes,
being Pittsburgh. So, All right, Sal, what's on the matchup show this weekend? What is?
You got it all. It's week 7. You just laid out the whole show, Pat.
Well, I want everybody to tune in anyway, because aside from this show, it's the most erudite football program on, and I want everybody to check it out. So make sure you do that this weekend on ESPN. You can.
Well, you got Sean Green, you got Gary Myers, you got Pat Leonard, you got an all-star cast coming up, Pat. I don't have that. I got, NFL Films, Greg Cosell. That's the big guns there, Pat.
I got Sal Pal too. Thank God for that. Sal, thanks very much for joining me, and look forward to following you over the weekend here and another week, and we'll have you back on to talk about what you called a must-win game, and I think it's going to be very interesting to see how they do. Gotta have it. All right, Sal. Thanks very much, pal. All right, Sal Paolantonio joining me there. Some great conversation always is with Sal. All right, listen, we get back. The great Sean Green is going to join me. We're going to talk about some interesting props on Eagles Giants, and also a few games from a very good Week 7 slate. We'll do that next on This Week in Pro Football, presented by Park Bank.